Now that we have officially made it to the home stretch of the NBA season, past the All-Star break, it is time to rank the contenders, the teams that actually have the best chance to win the title this year. So I have these teams ranked in 4 different tiers, and then I have them ranked within the tiers all the way up to the number 1 team. I'm obviously not ranking every single team in the league. These are the teams that I could see realistically winning the NBA title this season, and that list begins, begrudgingly kind of, with a 1-team tier, the 4th tier of contenders, and it is only the Miami Heat. Honestly, they are only here because every single year they are a lower seeded team in the playoffs, yet they still manage to make the finals anyway, or at least get close. And I cannot realistically make this list and the Miami Heat not be on it. They are in their own tier. They are all the way at the bottom. They are the least contender-y of any contender that we have at the moment. But because of their history in the postseason, they cannot be on this. They cannot not be on this list, I should say. As long as they're healthy, Jimmy, Bam, all these other guys, they've made some improvements to the roster. They've added Jaime Jaquez, who's been really good as a rookie. I cannot discount them, and I can totally see them making the finals. They have to be on the list. Now we get to tier 3. These are all the non-Miami Heat contending teams, and that tier begins with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, part of the reason they're ranked where they are at the bottom of tier 3 is because I don't know what the future holds for Joel Embiid in terms of the end of his season, and without Embiid, they're just not contenders. But because of the possibility that Embiid could return and play really well in the postseason, they do still have to be on the list, but I'm not very confident in, 1, him coming back in any kind of real timetable, and 2, him being really good and playing at a highly successful playoff level. He's had issues in the past playing well in the postseason anyway, much less coming back from a major injury, while everybody else has just been playing games and showing up and immediately being like MVP levels of awesome. The rest of the roster is still very good. I like Nick Nurse as head coach, but without a fully healthy, ready to go Joel Embiid, they cannot be higher than this on my own personal ranking of these contenders. Next on the list, the Cleveland Cavaliers have to be involved here. I'm surprised that they are here given the fact that Evan Mobley and Darius Garland have missed so much time, but Donovan Mitchell has been so good, and they have been unbelievable leading up to the All-Star break. I think they won like 16 of their last 18 games leading into the All-Star break, even without Mobley and Garland for most of them. We still have to kind of see how they reintegrate those guys back into the team with Mobley and Garland now back, but I can't really make this, like, if a team almost wins 18 games in a row, basically going into the All-Star break, I feel like they have to be on this list of contenders. They're still a great two-way team. They added some nice players in the offseason like Max Strus that have been good for them, and Donovan Mitchell has been one of the better playoff performers that we've had over the last handful of seasons, and so Cleveland has to be on the list. Next up now in tier 3 is the New York Knicks, another team I did not expect to put here maybe a month or two ago, but since the OG Anunoby trade, even though he hasn't played recently, they've looked like one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. I totally could see them winning the East in certain circumstances. Jalen Brunson's very good. They're still waiting on Julius Randle to come back. They're of course waiting on OG Anunoby to get healthy. I would presume that all those guys are going to be healthy by the time we get to the postseason, and with the way that they guard and with as good as Jalen Brunson is, especially at the end of games, New York has to be on the list. Next up now in tier 3, again, keep in mind these are in order as we go up further in the tier. I have the Phoenix Suns. Now, some people might make this list and not include Phoenix at all, but I still would be concerned to play against them in a postseason series with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. They still have plenty of flaws to get figured out, but they've been better lately, certainly since Beal has come back for real this time. And I like some of the additions that they made at the trade deadline. Royce O'Neal is going to be able to help them. They've got decent depth now throughout the perimeter of their roster, and obviously it's all going to depend on health. These guys have to be healthy, but I don't see a team in the West that Phoenix just absolutely can't beat in a 7-game series, and so I feel like they have to be on the list. I still would be very, very afraid of the Suns. And then to round out tier 3 is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, if you guys have watched some of my videos throughout the season, you know that I haven't really been a huge fan of this Bucks team, even going back to when their record was much, much better, and they were, the 1 seed in the conference. Since they brought in Doc Rivers, obviously their record has been really bad. That's not really the point of putting them where I have them. I don't think they were particularly good even before they brought in Doc Rivers. Defensively, they were a bottom 10 team in defensive rating. We've never had a team in the last 2 years win a playoff series when they were in the bottom 20 of defensive rating, much less make it all the way to the finals. But I still have to put them on the list because it is Giannis and it is Dame and Chris Middleton. It's a talented team, and it's a team that, despite Doc Rivers' history as a postseason coach, he does have an NBA title under his belt, as does Giannis, and I can't completely take them off the list, and I put them at the top of tier 3 here because I could see a scenario where within a couple of weeks they figure some stuff out defensively and all of a sudden they're really, really good. And again, I would not want to play against Giannis in the postseason, even though I don't think Milwaukee as a team overall is like fantastic. I do still think they belong in tier 3 here of these contenders. And now we move to tier 2. It is once again a 1-team tier, and it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I want Oklahoma City City to be higher than this. I want them to be in the top tier contenders. They're one of my favorite teams to watch. I probably watch them more than almost any other team throughout the league this season. And they are unquestionably a contending level team. They have an MVP candidate in SGA. Jalen Williams is a rising star. Chet Holmgren has been awesome this year, and they have a really, really deep and well-rounded roster and a good coaching staff as well. The only reason they're not tier one is that they're just a little bit young and they don't have enough size on the front court in certain matchups. Like most of the other teams on this list, you can kind of figure out a way where they might be okay in certain matchups. I don't think Oklahoma City has nearly as many options, especially in the front court against teams like Denver, for example, or like Minnesota, for example, teams that we're going to be talking about here in a second. Those are just unbelievably difficult matchups for them. And obviously they have, plenty of matchup issues for the other team to deal with as well, with how good they are offensively. And overall, their defensive rating this year has been really good. But Chet, all the time at the 5 against some of these bigger teams and not really having a true 4 out there either just makes me nervous. And Oklahoma City is very, very good. They're a really good, two-way team. And certainly I do think that they're contenders, but they're not quite, despite their record, all the way on the top level. Speaking of the top level, these are your top 4 contending teams for me right now post All-Star break. Starting off in that tier 1 is the LA Clippers. Now, to be honest, I think the Clippers are much closer to the best team in the league right now than they are the 4th best team in the league. But I can't in good conscience put them that high when we all know that they are 1 or 2 injuries away from this thing completely collapsing. And one, that's the case for every team, and the possibility of that injury occurring is much more likely for them than pretty much any other team that is even on the list in general. So if you tell me right now that the Clippers are fully healthy for the entirety of the postseason, I would be very tempted to put them either 1 or 2 on this list. The only reason they wouldn't be 1 would be because I'd be a little bit nervous about what James Harden looks like in the playoffs. But strictly from a roster perspective, how well they've played after the first handful of games of the Harden trade, if they are healthy, I think they're 1 or 2 of the best teams in the entire league. But I put them at 4 here because of the possibility of injuries. They are very, very good. They can beat any team on any night. And since they really figured out the Harden stuff, their offense has been unbelievable and they have so much size defensively. Ty Lue is a great coach as well. I really hope we get a healthy Clippers team because they are truly, truly a top tier contender in my opinion. Next in this tier, I'm going to put the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now they have had an unbelievable regular season and I truly think that they could win the title this year. I think they could make the finals. I think they could beat any team in the Western Conference. Absolutely 100%. Okay. The only reason that they're 3 is because of 1, the 2 teams ahead of them, and 2, Karl-Anthony Towns is going to have to be a big part of whatever they do in the postseason. And there have just been one too many times for me where Karl-Anthony Towns makes extremely questionable decisions in the postseason, whether it be because of foul trouble or otherwise, crazy shot selection, not playing particularly well in a given game. And then of course we have some of those issues with Rudy Gobert in the past as well, getting played off the floor, all that different kind of stuff. And I think Minnesota's play style works really, really well in the postseason. They're going to be able to rebound extremely well. They match up really well with a lot of these different teams, especially Denver, who we're going to talk about in a second. But it's a little bit of the young team stuff with Anthony Edwards and Cat, but I'm not really worried about Anthony Edwards. I am worried about Karl-Anthony Towns, and because of that uncertainty, I do put them at number 3 here. By the way, still incredible Minnesota fans that this is a team that I think is the 3rd best contending team in the entire league right now. That's definitely not a negative thing. I just, despite how good they are and how good their record is, I can't in good conscience put them ahead of the next team on the list here, the defending champion Denver Nuggets. Now, the Nuggets haven't really been getting a ton of attention this season because they already won the title last year and they haven't done anything extraordinary this year, but they're basically exactly where they were last year from a record standpoint. All the numbers, all the metrics basically match up pretty much exactly with where they were last year. And then again, keep in mind last year towards the end of the year, they really didn't play particularly well going into the postseason. And so given the fact that they're the defending champs and given the fact that they have who I think is going to be the MVP, Nikola Jokic, they're still very good. And I'm not going to count them out in any postseason series. And if you think that the Nuggets are on the same level as an overall team, talent perspective as, Oklahoma City, Minnesota, any of these other teams in the West, if you think that, then you kind of have to give them the edge because of their championship experience, because they won the title last year, and because, in my opinion, they would have the best player in the series as well in Nikola Jokic. So it might sound interesting and fun to put Minnesota, Oklahoma City over Denver, but I think that would be an overestimation of how good those teams have been this year relative to your expectations, and maybe just getting a little bit bored of Denver. I think they're the best team in the Western Conference, or the second contender on this list for me. And the number 1 contender on the list for me is the Boston Celtics. And honestly, I don't feel that good about it. There are times when I watch Boston and I'm like, I don't I don't get it. I don't get why Jaylen Brown randomly goes 2 for 15 on a given night. I don't get why they're taking as many threes as they do when they could just get to the rim. There's a lot of things about Boston that I just don't understand. But here's what I do know. The playoffs, by and large, are about two things. One, it's about your best players playing well when they really need to. And two, having a 5-man unit that starts and finishes games that is better than the other teams, okay? And Boston has the star power in Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, more so Tatum than Brown. And also, their 5-man unit, if they are healthy, of Brown, Tatum, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and Kristaps Porzingis, if those 5 guys are on the floor and they're healthy, there is no other unit in the league, including units that include, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid. There's no other 5-man unit in the entire league that can touch what those guys can do on both ends of the floor, especially if they're making threes. And that's the thing that gives me full confidence in Boston. Yes, they've had some weird games this year. They've blown games that they shouldn't have, and they rely too much on the 3-point shot, and there's a lot of variance in that. But also, I just can't bet against a team that has as much talent as they do. And as long as Porzingis is healthy, which I know you can't especially count on, but if Porzingis is healthy, I think they're the best team. And even if he isn't, I think they're very, very close, depending on how, some of the variance works out with some of the 3-point shooting. So as long as Tatum's really good and as long as they're healthy, I think they're the best team in the league. And that right now is how I'd rank the Contenders going into the post All-Star break kind of era of the NBA season.